Ahead of the 2024 training camp period, Commissioner Adam Silver has announced the expansion of the NBA to 32 teams, news that fans all around the world have been waiting for quite some time. And we'll be taking over one of those teams and doing a draft-only rebuild here on NBA 2K25. Series that we had a lot of fun with last year, and I'm super excited to get one kicked off here again with this brand new game. Just got back off of vacation and off of a move, and I'm excited to hop into 2K25. Turns out my timing was pretty lucky because there was a pretty bad substitution glitch upon the release of the game. I've heard that it's been fixed, so I'm ready to get this series underway. Let's find out just who these two new expansion teams are gonna be. One of the teams joining the league should come to the surprise of nobody, as the Seattle Supersonics are back in the NBA. It's about time. Ever since really the rumors of expansion have started, Seattle regaining a team has been heavily involved in those rumors, and in this series they will be back in this league. Now, the other team may come to a surprise of some people, as it's not Las Vegas, but it will be a team in the West, as Vancouver, another team who has had a team in the past, the Grizzlies, formerly of Vancouver. They are in the league once more, but they are not retaining their old team name because, Grizzlies is taken, as a matter of fact, in Memphis. But the Vancouver Blizzard are joining the NBA. I think we've got some really fun uniforms here, and of course I'll drop the person who uploaded these uniforms, who helped. I did edit these a little bit. The homes I pretty much didn't touch. I think they look pretty good. I'm iffy about the top part there, but I think it's a good starting place for these. For the away, I had to change them up a little bit here, but here's what we're rocking with. And then the alternates, pretty reminiscent of those Miami uniforms, and that's kind of the uniform that I wanted to base this choice off of. I wanted a team that could rock those sweet kind of blue, pink, black combinations. I think it's a really good look, and I'm excited for this rebuild. But with us adding two teams that are deep in the West, we had to balance the league out just a little bit. And the Memphis Grizzlies, who, if you look at Memphis on a map, should have been in the Eastern Conference all along. Of course, as we mentioned, they did start their time in Vancouver, which is why they were in the West to begin with, but they finally move east where they need to be. This is the league alignment that we're rocking with here to start this rebuild, and I think we're going to have a lot of fun here in the Northwest Division. We have the other expansion team alongside us, so we're going to play them a bunch. That's something I'm really excited about. Last rebuild we did with the Nashville Sound, we only played our expansion rivals on rare occasions because, of course, we were in opposite conferences. We're going to see a lot of Seattle, and our rebuilds will be able to be compared side by side. Of course, we also have two of the better teams in the entire conference in our division as well, with Minnesota and Denver. They will be two very challenging teams for us to try to match up with throughout the series. Utah's also rebuilding, and so by the time we're good, maybe Utah can be good as well with all their draft picks, all their young players. I think this is going to be a really fun division to be a part of. Not that divisions are a massive thing in basketball. I feel like they're not as important as maybe other sports, your division, but I still think it's a really fun division. I think it's a really fun team. And now it's time to figure out who's going to be on our year one roster. In terms of the settings here for this franchise, I do like to boost draft quality a little bit. We are doing a draft-only franchise, and so I have to make sure that we have solid draft classes. Don't like to make it overpowered, just a small boost typically somewhere in kind of the mid to high 50s. Let's start with 58, see where it goes. Another thing you pretty much have to do if you're planning on doing a long-term franchise series here on 2K is max out that salary cap inflation rate. Otherwise, teams just won't be able to sign people. You'll have guys who should be starting, let alone, definitely on people's rosters, just sitting there in free agency after a few years if you don't have the salary cap increasing year by year. And so we're boosting that all the way up to the max, trying to get these teams to retain their core players and trying to keep those starting caliber players out of free agency come the start of the regular season. We'll be making some other changes here to the contracts as well, not just, inflating the salary cap value inflation rate, but if you want truly there to be players asking for realistic contracts so that, again, we don't get a bunch of people who should very well be signed in free agency, you have to mess with these sliders as well. I am taking most of my sliders and using Stumpy as a base. He is also a creator here. Awesome CPU versus CPU 2K franchise style content creator. Want to give him a shout out. He does awesome with the sliders. For the most part, I take from him. I do make some minor changes myself, but here's what we're going for this. Some more slider adjustments here. Again, a lot of these are taken from Stumpy. I just have slightly altered them myself. One thing I do over very differently here is the simulator difficulty. I just think you take an expansion team and they'll often end up in the play-in if you keep it at the base 50. I don't really like that. I want us to earn kind of being a postseason contender type of team. I had it in the mid 60s last year and I thought it worked out really well. I thought when we deserved to be a good regular season team, we were, but when we were one of the worst teams in the league, we played like it in the simulation. And so I feel like somewhere in the 60s is right where you want to be for the most realistic, where you will be punished for being a bad team, but not overly difficult to the point where even if you're good, you will be bad. So here is what we're rocking with. This really customizes the franchise experience. I would absolutely recommend if you're doing long-term 2K franchises to mess with these sliders as well. It will make the series a lot more interesting for you and hopefully for me too here in our Vancouver Blizzard draft only rebuild. And then these sliders right here, I just take directly from Stumpy. I do not do any of my own edits here. These will all affect the stats you get in simulation. Obviously, with 82 games a season, you're not going to play even remotely close to all of them. So getting good simulation stats is very important. All this right here, this simulation tab, affects that. And I don't do the work grinding these out to get the best sliders, so I defer to the experts, and Stumpy is certainly one of them in my opinion. So go check his channel out if you haven't already. If you like this style of rebuild, he does expansion CPU versus CPU franchises on 2K, and they're usually really, really good. As for the expansion draft, we have 9 players currently projected. The base is 8. We're going to make it just a little bit harder to get good players in the expansion draft. I think it's a little bit too easy. 10 you could even argue for here. But I want to have a little bit of fun because this is the only time in this entire series where I will be able to get players who are not generated by the game onto my team that can actually play. Now we'll talk about some ways that we used in 2K23 to get some real life players on the game, but even if we do that, they won't be playing. So gonna do 9. Hopefully we can get a couple of at least decent players that have a shot at making the team long term. And as you can see, I ended up boosting the draft quality to 65 here after doing a little bit more research. I feel like that's going to be more fun than I think I had it in somewhere in the high 50s before. Now as we prepare for the expansion draft, I think for the most part teams make logical decisions, but what are the Knicks doing here? How is Cameron Payne protected over OG Anunoby and Josh Hart, core pieces of this team? How is Pacom Dadier 69 overall? What is up with the Knicks decision making here? They just want to get off of big time contracts, but it's not like Julius Randle's locked up long term. I mean, OG is, and I guess 2K doesn't value OG as a value for 40 million for the next 4 years. I get that, I guess, but really strange decision making here. This isn't the only place, though. I mean, the Bucks didn't protect Middleton, which I guess I can understand. He's 33, but again, it's not like it's a long-term contract. You don't want to be worse this year around Giannis. I don't like that one. And then the worst of all, I think, is got to be Siakam. I'm not allowing myself to draft Siakam. So congrats on being a member of the Seattle Supersonics, Pascal. But I mean, and the Pistons have always hated Jalen Duren. It makes no sense to me. I think we might have to snag him this year. But like Bielak can also kind of make sense just with the absolute massive contract he has. Again, most teams I feel like make good decisions. You know, like, yeah, the Timberwolves are keeping their entire core. And then Dillingham isn't... What? Never mind. What is going on with these decisions? I was going to say the Timberwolves did a great job. But who are they... How are you protecting Clark? Oh my gosh. Okay, I gotta go and change some things. After thinking it through, I think I'm not going to change it. I'm just going to say I can't take any lottery picks, so Robert Dillingham is out. And I can't take anybody over 85 overall, which excludes Pascal Siakam. So those two are going to be Seattle Supersonics, unless the Timberwolves get lucky and Seattle doesn't draft him. But I'm not allowing myself to take Dillingham, and I'm not allowing myself to take Siakam in this draft. I don't think there's anybody else over 85. So I guess that also excludes, what's his face? Middleton, but that's fine. The 2024 NBA expansion draft is now upon us. And with the house rule that we can't take anybody 85 or up, and I'm even going to include Fred VanVleet in that with his +1 overall to his base 84 right now. The highest overall player on the board is OG Anunoby, but that is a very large contract on him. 20 years old, Jalen Duren seems like somebody that you could consider. I typically like higher inside defense, but he's a very good athlete, very good rebounder, can score on the inside. We had him in our very brief 2K22 draft-only franchise, but we didn't play that enough, I think, to keep me from wanting him here. Everybody that I took in last year's draft-only franchise, though, I am going to keep off my board for this one. I think, Quickly is 25, and he's a very exciting scoring guard. That is a solid option, but I have made up my mind. And with the first round pick in the 2024 expansion draft, the Vancouver Blizzard will select OG Anunoby here. I just think with OG, you're getting a guy who can be somebody who excels as a role player. Is he going to be the building block of a franchise? No, but you're not getting that in an expansion team. And he's 27 years old. I think he'll still be viable by the time we start to get good. And I think he plays both ways really well. I think he can shoot. He's probably going to be asked to do more than he should here in Vancouver, which is kind of a similar situation he had on the very other side of Canada in Toronto before landing with New York. Hopefully that's a short-term thing, though, and we can get somebody to kind of handle the load, and he can step into a spot where I think he can be really good as a 2 or a 3. Before we get to our next pick, we do have the Sonics taking Siakam and Chris Middleton, 2 players that were not even on our board because we could not take them, but a couple of veterans, and it looks like Seattle's trying to be a playoff team this year with their draft strategy so far. With the second round pick here in the 2024 expansion draft, we're going to go with Jalen Duren here. I think somebody that's just super young, getting a player that's already a starting caliber player. Maybe not, ever going to be the all-star caliber player, but Not the perfect player by any means, but he's 20 years old. Getting somebody that's already rotation viable, has the youth in Jalen Duren is exactly what I'm looking for here early in this draft class. We saw him briefly with the Outlaws series that we ended early in favor of the Sound series, and I liked what I saw, hoping we can see more of it here with Jalen Duren going forward. He's had a solid start to his career playing in Detroit. Now he's on the road to Vancouver. We have the very next pick in the draft, and we might call this a bit of a reach here. Many will, but I want a guy who's young, can play two ways. He's honestly kind of similar to OG Anunoby, but with the third round pick in the 2024 expansion draft, we're gonna take Josh Green, 6'7" here, great size, only 23 years old. He's got A- 3-point shooting and A- defense. The way we want to play this year, I think, is just play great defense, get out in transition, and find some open threes. And Josh Green is the kind of player that I feel like can hit that style. The Sonics would follow up our Duren and Green selections with Bradley Beal and Fred VanVleet. They are going to have a massive payroll this year. I don't even know if they can actually technically afford this. They're going to be hitting the hard cap soon. Luckily for them, a couple of these guys are just, one-year contracts with VanVleet and Middleton, but Siakam and Beal are two guys that they're going to be having on their team for the foreseeable future. They are... there are reasons, I maybe not have agreed with all of them, but there are reasons a lot of these guys were available here in the mid-'80s. That's because their contracts are massive, and for a lot of them, they are also very long. We're back on the board here with our fourth round pick, and I think we've got some really solid players still on the board to choose from here, but there's one that is jumping out here, and I think we need a lead guard. So with the fourth round selection in the expansion draft, actually, we're not going to take quickly. I didn't see that 5-year, $162 million. There's a reason he's available. Almost selected him. Maybe we go with somebody who's a little bit more of a playmaker now. Lonzo Ball has certainly had a lot of injury issues in his career. We're going to take a chance on him here with our fourth round pick. I really think he plays into the defense, pace, find open threes kind of play style that I think we're going to try to run here in year one. And maybe we can surprise some people. After that, we're going to go with PJ Washington here with our fifth round selection. PJ hit some massive threes for Dallas on their playoff run that went, of course, all the way to the finals this last year. He's a guy that I really like coming out of the draft, and so I want a chance to have him in a series here. And with that being said, I think we do need another guard here. We've only taken one kind of true guard here. Can we get somebody who's an absolute sniper? We got some options here at the two-guard spot who can really shoot the ball. We got Duncan Robinson in the last time we did a draft on the franchise, so we're not going to take in. Karis LeVert's a bit of a shot creator that we could go for. I think that's interesting. But at only 25 years old, we're going to give Isaiah Joe a chance. He's just only 6'3", 165 pounds. That's not exactly the defender that you want. But we're getting into the sixth round here. And so the pickings are getting a little bit slimmer. He's got a very reasonable contract for the next few years, and he can really, really shoot the ball. We're adding some shooters here. Lonzo Ball, A-, Josh Green, A-. Nobody has less than an A-3 out of anybody that we picked, except for, of course, our big man, Jalen Duren, who I think still plays into that play style of that really high pace. Up next here, I think we're going to start looking just for a bit of youth here. Of course, we cannot take Robert Dillingham here, but Kayshawn George, I think, could be interesting. Isaiah Collier as a rookie could be interesting. Leonard Miller all guys that are pretty good and just 20 years old. You can get a little bit better if you go up to 21 years old there with a guy like Max Christie, who just kind of is looking like a solid three-way scorer, or three-level scorer, excuse me, here with solid athleticism as well. So there's that. We had Patrick Baldwin last year, so he's ineligible. But I'm kind of liking maybe reaching here for a Max Christie. Solid scoring potential in the long term for us. Seattle continues to add on to their crazy payroll here. Emmanuel Quickly getting paid $30+ million a year over the next 5 seasons. And then they go with Vince Williams Jr. here. That's their first time they've taken a player under 80 overall, so they're definitely looking to compete. That's often what the CPU does. But they're going to be in quite a bit of a hole. Their avenues for improving are basically going to be the draft. We might be having 2 draft-only franchises here in this series. I think it's about time that we add a vet here. Malcolm Brogdon on just a 1-year deal, I think, is a really good vet to have in the room who can set his teammates up. At the point guard spot, I really like guys who can get good shots for their teammates. I think Malcolm Brogdon can do just that. Really solid defender as well. Good shooter, fits the build. Now we've got 2 veteran point guards that I think can help our other players out on this very young team that we're going to have here. Up next, I'm kind of thinking Leonard Miller here at 20 years old. I know he's only 70 overall. We're going to give him a chance, though. Leonard Miller, welcome to the team. Let's get a young guy into the team here. Backup center is something that we still need, so that's what I'm looking for. Can we get a bit of shooting here? I think Wagner here. I don't know if you want to split up the Wagner brothers. I don't know if I particularly care that much either. You got Kevin Love if you want the big-time vet here. 2-year deal, pretty small one at that. He could be somebody that could be a solid mentor here. You know what? Let's give Kevin Love a chance to be our backup center. Don't think he's super happy about leaving Miami, though, at the age of 36. Cam Johnson's a bit of an inflated contract here, but he's just a good shooter. And despite the fact that it is a draft-only rebuild, we still can trade players for picks if we need to. And I think Cam Johnson is a guy who we could just bet on the shooting. We're building a pretty good roster of shooters with, I think, point guards that can get them in good shots. So I think we have a chance to be a team that's a little frisky this year at times. I think we have enough veterans now, so we're going to continue to add to our young core. How about KJ Martin Jr., somebody that I've just always liked when he's played. You know, not the perfect player. We're at the very end of an expansion draft here, so that's not what you're really looking for. Zeke Naji. How about Zeke Naji here with our 13th selection here in the expansion draft? And these are our last selections. Again, going to go by the young guys here. Wagner, one of the best young players we have, but you're already up to 27 years old at that point. How about Imani Bates? You know what? I'm feeling some Imani Bates. I think that's a fun pick there, and that will be the end of the expansion draft for the Vancouver Blizzard. We got a lot of shooting in this draft. We got playmaking point guards, and I think we have a chance to be a really interesting team. We're not going to win a lot of games. I don't think that's really on the table for us. But can we be a team that just annoys the crap out of people? I think we can. And, you know, when you're hitting a lot of threes, you have a chance at pretty much any game you play. Seattle definitely will be better than us this year, you'd have to imagine. But they are a very, very expensive team. We're also not super cheap, if I'm being honest. So here's the final look at our roster here. Is there a position I should have gotten more of? I mean, we have more bigs. We only have 2 point guards and 2 shooting guards. And our two point guards are injury-prone vets. That might be something that we come to regret. Isaiah Joe might be playing some point guard for us this year. But I think we've got, again, just a really interesting team here. A lot of shooting. If we sort by 3-point, we've got 6 players with at least A- 3-point, and if you extend that down to B, you can add even a couple more onto that list. Hopefully we have a system that can give those shooters some good looks, and that's pretty much going to be our winning recipe. Meanwhile, the Sonics have 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 players that are at least 80 overall. Good luck figuring out that rotation. They look like a team that needs like 2 trades. I mean, if you're looking at a strategy of maybe taking a Pascal Siakam to flip him, or taking a Clint Capella to flip him, something like that, then I think you can commend that strategy. But some of these contracts are just too big. Like Beal, I don't think would have much trade value. Middleton, but I do think they could get something solid if they wanted to move Siakam or Van Vliet, or one of these 380 overall centers that they have. But an interesting strategy. We'll just have to see how it plays out with that crazy payroll. Now let's take a minute to talk about the staff, and really the only one worth talking about right now is head coach Lamont Powers, of course, a player from our 2023 Nashville Sound squad. Just the ultimate team player. No surprise that this guy would turn into a head coach in his career. He prefers 7 seconds, which is why, we took a lot of the players that we did. A lot of the guys who could play defense, get out in transition, hit a quick 3. He likes defense. He likes wings. He likes 3s. That was the kind of player he was. That's the kind of team he wants to run here on this squad. He has 6 badges. They're all silver or bronze. I wanted to make him a good coach without making him super overpowered. So this is what I went with. 3 bronze badges, 3 silver. He's going to have teacher, wing whisperer, which makes sense because he was a wing in the league, and perimeter D-master, which was his best attribute. And then he's also going to have mentor at bronze, shot doctor at bronze. He was a solid shooter. And of course he has former player because he was a former player in our 2K23 franchise. And I'm excited to have him as our head coach. I don't know why he looks so ugly in his picture here, but when you click on his card, you can see what he actually looks like. You can still argue that doesn't look a ton like Lamont Powers, but hey, I can only work with what I've got from here from 2K. I looked at it like 70 faces, and that was the best one probably. So head coach Lamont Powers will be heading up this squad this season, and hopefully for the entirety of this franchise, if I'm being honest. Now let's talk a little bit about the style of this franchise. I am a CPU versus CPU franchise style of creator here. I think the best way to play franchise mode, it allows me to focus solely on building up the team and not whether or not I can figure out a bunch of players' jump shots to get them green. And I know there are other ways to play the game as well, but this is my preferred way of playing. It allows me to play GM, I feel like, in the most pure way, and I've found a lot of people who also enjoy this style of content. It was very successful with our Nashville Sound. That was a very fun franchise, and I'm hoping we can replicate and even exceed the amount of fun we had with that here with our Vancouver Blizzard. But ultimately, it's up to me to make sure I make the right moves with the coaches, with the playbooks, with the rotations. I can do all that. The only thing I don't do is control the players in the game. During the scrimmage, we don't have access to the broadcast camera, so it won't look exactly like this. I will go with the broadcast camera, which is better than this, but I just wanted to showcase a little bit of CPU versus CPU gameplay. This is also before I've put in any CPU versus CPU sliders, which I will be doing. I'll probably, once again, like I've stated earlier on in this video, be referring to Stumpy here with a couple of changes on my own, but I think he does a really good job with the sliders, so I haven't put those in yet, so this gameplay you're seeing right here is on the base sliders, so it'll look a little bit different once we start playing. But ultimately, I think this is going to be a very fun project. I think I like the uniforms, I like the colors, I like the squad we've built so far, and I'm excited to get things underway here in this rebuild. Last time we were able to get a couple of keepers out of the expansion draft, but for the most part this team was heavily different by, you know, like the third year, and forcing myself to get a good scouting department so that we can get good drafts is of course going to be key in our draft only rebuild. If you have any ideas as to some house rules that we can implement in this series, please let me know. I'm open to suggestions. Last time we allowed ourselves to get some mentor players as long as they weren't actually in our rotation to kind of help the development of our young guys. I'm leaning towards doing that again. I think that was a fun addition to the offseason that made us have something important to do other than just the draft. You know, actually free agency did some important things for us. As we see our first pick, OG Anunoby, with a nice drive there. But if you have any other kind of house rules that you'd like to implement, I'd be happy to hear them. With that said, I'm excited to get things underway. Our very first game is going to be against the Seattle Supersonics, and I'm excited to introduce what our rotation will be like, as well as get the season underway in that episode. The last thing I want to talk about here before we end off this introductory episode of our Vancouver Blizzard draft-only franchise is a team slogan. We had one last year with our Nashville Sound. It was Sound Up. So far I have hashtag Bring the Blizzard here for our Vancouver Blizzard. If you have something better, please let me know. I'd love to get some feedback from you all as to what that should be. It's kind of my signature to say that at the end of my episodes, whatever that slogan ends up becoming. So with that said, I'll be back soon, with more Vancouver Blizzard franchise. I think maybe 20 likes on the video, and I'll drop the next episode tomorrow. But until that next episode comes, bring the Blizzard.